Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. I don't know if I'd ever really expected myself to actually make a review discussing the works of Hunter S. Thompson, particularly because this is the only one I actually read by him, and it wasn't all that long ago that I did. It was maybe late last year that I finally got around to it, and also watched the movie by Terry Gilliam, which is fantastic, obviously. Classic. Doesn't really need to be stated. I think he did a faithful job of adapting it and keeping those psychedelic kind of maddening surrealist elements as well. And yeah, as Hunter S. Thompson is quite the character of a person, um, divisive, and as he was, uh, like pretty crazy wit, and he had a intelligence to him, but he had was a just a very um, interested. It's hard to describe his personality. He has like kind of a obviously I can't really do his voice, but he does a mumbling like ooh. I mean, I think Johnny Depp did a pretty good job of kind of retaining that kind of mumbling kind of pseudo like um, murmur like talking that doesn't have a lot of has kind of more bass to it. But yeah, there's in the toting of the constant toting of the cigarette and on constant ingesting of different drugs and yeah, and yeah, these were things. There's times, I guess, historically. So these were the the psychedelic era, right? I think the '60s and '70s with Timothy Leary and different people. I think even the more kind of Zen people later on, like Ram Dass, like kind of were even kind of a part of that. Were kind of maybe a little bit part of it. You have a lot of um, yeah, people advocating for the use of like healthy use of drugs, and they're like, yeah, and that kind of wry cynicism and that plays part in the interesting plot to this, but yeah, it's very frenetic on just very just crazy novel, and like the only way to kind of read it or listen to it is to kind of have that kind of narrative voice of Hunter S. Thompson's Raoul Duke, the main character, who is basically an autobiographical kind of semi uh, fictional version, but it's also based in highly rooted in real life scenarios or things that did happen. Like he was, I think Hunter S. Thompson was commissioned to write because he was a journalist as well as being an author to write about like this like some type of buggy race or something in like Las Vegas and out in the deserts, obviously where that's permitted, where kind of go wild, and people are still doing that. People still go to Nevada or Utah or all those. I mean, I went out to Las Vegas last year for a wedding, and it was like totally different because there's always more. There's like a sect of very kind of clean people that out there that my friend knew. So it was like very just kind of interesting to be out there in that atmosphere where it's like so notorious for its rampant just I guess vice and like uh, city of vice, right? I mean, it's become the trope, but I think there's also another side of it where it's just like normal people like you and I trying to just live a normal life, but the kind in the 1970s or the 60s, I believe, that Thompson went to, to cover this kind of race was very boisterous and a lot of like showy type, showmanship and lots of I still there today. I mean, you still saw scrolling down Las Vegas, like the Strip or the Boulevard, or whatever. You still see, signs for like magician shows, or like big shows that sold out shows of like this and this, or you still see um, uh, just showgirl type stuff, very just glaring, garish kind of lighting and cheeky and all that stuff too, like the very chintzy recreation of the that I can't remember if it's the casino, the main casino, where there's a which plays a part in the novel too, where basically the this like the big sphinx thing that that very that's very chintzy and kishy is the word because it's like it's done in this very it's an artifact that's so recognizable of architecture of history, and it's like made into a mockery basically, and it's just like, hey, come here to gamble on your luck, and it's just like, okay, It's just yeah, but there's I like how it's like Hunter S. Thompson is in a weird way. He's both satirizing it and also kind of partaking in it. He's like, so he's going off to Las Vegas to write the story about dune buggy people out in the race. But the novel really actually has very little to do with that. It's more so about his rampant and extraneous drug use with his partner called Dr. Gonzo, and obviously probably has something to do with Gonzo journalism. Is the reason I think he kind of called his doctor kind of, but he also refers to him as various things like here's my secretary, Mr. Gonzo or Dr. Gonzo for the most part, just kind of tongue in cheek. But I don't think he actually ever reveals who he is. But he just kind of obliquely mentions him as kind of his assistant, I guess. But they're basically kind of screwing off and just basically doing hard drugs and various psychedelics, and yeah, and I think the first thing to know about drugs is that there is a discrete difference between the kind of hard line kind of cocaine and speedball or even weed, or like the milder stuff like weed, or like and the psychedelics, where psychedelics is more of a kind of psychic psychologically, like neurologically, it's messes, not messes, but it kind of toys, it kind of tampers with your mind. And it's like, we're going to mess with your mind and kind of make things. And, there's like spooky images and stuff, which they instantly, like, there's right off the bat, you start in media res, I guess, as a correct term, to like in the middle of the narrative, just to kind of see these two crazy guys speeding down the highway in this, this convertible, with just like fear, fear and loathing. That's why it's called Fear and Loathing. Is a fitting name because I'm sure Thompson knew this because it just perfectly fits how these two characters, especially, and a lot of the people in Las Vegas, but like people who maybe could are more used to this, but like maybe they're Raoul is, his, that's what we're referred to as him, refers himself as, and it's narrated from him first person, and it's just like totally, completely, like aware that maybe these drugs aren't good for him, like he shouldn't take them, but he keeps taking them, and he's just like, I took it, and then it's always about excessive, like way too much, and he's just like speeding down, and he starts like fearing that like something's out to get him, or like he keeps hallucinating different things, and he's just like extra paranoid, and it's yeah, there's a lot of yeah, so they're yeah, they are trying to cover this shoot of the motorcycles. Actually, it was the 400 motorcycle race. That's right. So yeah, they're basically in this car doing and they're both on LSD, and they pick up a hitchhiker. I think right off the bat, and basically they end up scaring him off, and he shows up kind of later on the novel. Funnily enough. Um, so when they finally arrive at their hotel where they're supposed to be staying at, he's so both of them are so out of it. Like he starts seeing, like, I think Terry Gilliam did an excellent job of kind of translating the psychedelic kind of feverish kind of way of everything's being skewered, and everything is so, people are like can just as easily like resemble, because like the liminal or like not even subliminal, but just like visual actual effects of the hallucinations are, you're seeing things that aren't there. Kind of like in Bad Lieutenant with Nicolas Cage, like why is that lizard there? Like why is there like a gecko? And I was like, there's no gecko. So it's the kind of cliche, maybe a bit of a trope, but maybe rooted in some reality of there being literally stuff you're seeing, stuff that's not real. So he's tripping out his balls on this substance, and he's taken God knows how many of these different tablets, or these different bleeder tablets or whatever, and it's just like, yeah, lots of different kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of things of drugs and this and that, and they're going to cover this race, and basically they're kind of there's different ways, like his attorney, Dr. Gonzo, has his own way of processing drugs, which is to be like really violent, and like there's a pretty funny scene where he's like stuck in a bathtub, and he's like literally thinking about, oh gosh, I'm going to kill myself, and I guess, and he's because the drugs for him just like create like this very like physical like volatile kind of like side effects, whereas for like maybe um, for Raul is there's less of that. There's more of maybe just a kind of a mental thing, but also like very much the same paranoia, but still. Um, so yeah, they're both out, and they end up going around the city to kind of like get a feel for the city, I guess, before the race starts, and they're going around. And there's different like like whack-a-mole type things, and the movie did that, covered that as well. And there's it's pretty funny. But the humor is always like kind of not undercut, but just kind of followed by something like very kind of like kind of dark. And this there's a lot of questions I had, and I guess like maybe probably the average person has who maybe hasn't done drugs to the excessive effect of these characters, but like it's like this the mentality of like maybe if it's that bad to take, then if you're taking these things and they're that affecting and they're having such a negative effect, why take them at all? And that's like the question of like I guess the well-being, and like is it really worth it, and I think like maybe this is like I got this book I think was like controversial probably because it felt like it was expose or encouraging people to take drugs, but like I think it's the opposite. I think like for me it kind of had the bleak image of just like of near death experience, almost like an NDE, and like just wild hallucinations and paranoia. That's actually made me kind of fearful of like taking it. No pun intended, but it's they end up going to a circus and they just see like everything's just like off. Taking mescaline and it's just like completely discordant and not true to like what's really going on. So it's just they end up going to the race, and they sleep. They don't even get a wink of sleep, and they're basically they know that. And there's one officer too, who's like like saying he's like you better like pull over and get some sleep, and he's like no I can't because I've been up for this long. Um, but yeah, they both end up kind of working their way through like an almost semi odyssey like around Las Vegas, trying to kind of hit up these different things. And they're also funnily there's a very humorous part of the novel, very ironic kind of satire almost of like when they're made to go as I think as part of their job, they're made to attend this anti-drug meeting for like like this or the dangers of drugs, and like they walk into this kind of like venue, and all these people are and they're just like way high off their mind, and they're just like walking into this venue just like completely just like the antithesis to like everything that this like everybody's talking about, like don't like if taking drugs will kill you, like you will die, and like here they are, they're just like so paranoid and so like on the edge of whatever. And but yeah, you get lots of kind of awry kind of look into drug use too. That's like it's not really glamorizing. It's not like making it out to be like, hey man, it's like it's just everything's whatever. And there's it's pretty a lot of there's like the monologue, I think it's called the wave speech, that the narrator gives near the end of the novel, I think, where he talks about like the hippie kind of subculture or like cultural type of thing at the time, where he talks about the but the quote here is the strange memories on the nervous night in Las Vegas 5 6 years later 6, it seems like a lifetime, or at least in Mount era, like a kind of peak that never comes again. San Francisco's in the middle 60s was a very special time and a place to be a part of. Maybe it meant something. Maybe not in the long run, but no explanation, no mix of words or music or memories can touch that sense of knowing that you are alive and in the corner of time, that the world, whatever it meant. So there's a kind of cultural consciousness, I guess, that he's talking to, but that everybody was kind of in tune with at the time. It's like, I think that for the amount of irony that you get, and a lot of like, well, like just like deadpan almost look just kind of into what was going on, and and just kind of making their way through Las Vegas, and like just the city of just complete hucksters everywhere. Just everybody's trying to sell you something. Everybody's, like even in the bathroom when he's using, I think there's like one guy who's like, "Hey man, you got something?" He's like literally licking the extra stuff off his thing. He's like, "Oh," like even Raul was freaked out by that because just the sheer amount of, I guess, desperation. I guess everybody seemed to be at the end of their ropes, just vying for anything, any type of kick or any type of like um, high that you could get. Um, but yeah, there's another thing, another quote too that was like that I liked about the my central memory of what seems to be hangover maybe 5 or maybe 40 nights or very very early mornings when I left the Fillmore half crazy and instead of going home, aimed at the big 650 Lightning and across Bay Bridge in 100 miles an hour, wielding LL Bean shorts and a sheep herder's jacket, becoming looming through the Treasure Island tunnel at the lights of Oakland, Berkeley, and Richmond, not quite sure which turnoff to take, and I got off on the other end, always stalling at the toll gate, too twisted to find neutral when I fumbled for change, but absolutely not being absolutely certain no matter which way I went would come to a place that was just as high and wild as I was. Yeah. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing of like just being completely taking it to its logical conclusion of like, well, okay, well, I'll just jump in with this kind of wave, and so yeah, they covered this race, and basically, near the end, they're trying to miss their flight. Spoiler alert, obviously. Well, actually, Gonzo's the only one who needs to be on the flight, so he ends up driving him back, and he's like, it's an interesting kind of thing where he's like, oh, he's an interesting guy. He's like that. Dr. Gonzo's a strange man, but he's got I forget what he said word for word, but it was just like they kind of parted ways with an interesting kind of air. And yeah, there's some pretty interesting parts too. Like the like one really just completely edgy like girl that they was like who drew like stencils that type of thing, like drawings of or she did like watercolors of like Barbara Streisand, I think, and she was like like really kooky, and she was like kind of like I guess shacking up with Dr. Gonzo, and like it was the kind of thing I might have seen before, kind of trope of like this a girl like might be about to like at any point she might like break and like like cause him trouble or um but yeah, there's I thought that was an interesting kind of picture of like kind of that hippie kind of subculture, or which was probably the culture by that time at least. So anyway, that is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. Thanks for watching.